Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dojo Live. Today is Wednesday, November 10th, 2021. I'm Tulio Suragusa, broadcasting from Southern California, and joining me today are Kim Lantis in Hermosillo, Mexico, and Carlos Ponce in Cuernavaca, Mexico. Hey, guys, welcome back to the show.
Good to be here as
Thank
ever,
you.
Tulio.
Our guest today is Clifton Hartsuff, who's the co-founder and CEO at Plant3r with a 3. Welcome to the show, Clifton. I know you're broadcasting from Washington, D.C. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
So we're going to be talking about agriculture today, but agricultural tech. That's what we're going to talk about today. But before we unpack the conversation and introduce the topic for today's show, let's get to know our guest a little bit. And Clifton, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, and then we'll find out what Plant3r is all about. Thank you for joining us.
Sure. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here on Dojo Live. So the arc of my professional career really spans a couple of different areas. I started off by going to school with international relations degree. After that, I worked in intellectual property law for about 5 years. I honestly got extremely bored by that. I just fled at some point and went somewhere else looking for more interesting work. Spent a few years doing whatever I could, trying new areas until eventually I stumbled into business development, which I've been doing for the past 6 years or so. Around 2 years ago, I began working on Plant3r. So Plant3r is really a culmination of all of these different experiences and my personal passion for growing, put into the world and hopefully with a really positive outcome.
Great, excellent. Good to have you with us. Tell us about Plant3r. What's the company all about? What do you guys do?
Sure. So we're in the consumer ag tech space. Our goal is to promote food freedom in urban areas, urban suburban areas. We can say generally speaking. And the reason we were founded is we noticed that there is a knowledge, skills, and technical gap for people that are in an urban space but want to grow their own food. You've got options in different areas, usually requiring hours of research, but we wanted to be that go-to source for someone who's just starting out and wants to grow their own food and give them the confidence to scale up and then eventually, hopefully down the line, to even become, say, an urban farmer.
Very interesting. I love it. Okay, so let's see what we can learn today. Would love to understand why people would want to do this. It seems like we have a convenient supply chain in place right now, but before we do, let's introduce the topic and see what we can learn. Kim, do you mind, please? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Tulio, and thank you, Clifton, for being here today. Clifton, the topic for today's talk, as chosen by you, is rethinking urban agriculture, empowering consumers through the pursuit of food freedom. And the question we want to answer is, can urban agriculture be used to relocalize food production by upskilling, not upscaling, upskilling consumers, growing knowledge? So, as we kick off, Clifton, why did you choose this topic? Why is this relevant for today?
Sure. Thanks, Kim. So the reason it's relevant today is after the disruptions of the pandemic, people began to intuitively realize that their food supply is not as stable as what they thought it was. Previously, it was not uncommon to have within many major cities to have 5 or 6 days of supply of food, and we
Mhm.
saw as the pandemic rolled out that we reached the limit of those supply chains and there were breaks. So that's one reason. The other reason is that people having spent so much time in their home, they're beginning to realize that their home is a pretty amazing place to be, and they'd like to make it even more amazing through investments. And growing your own food is a significant investment in family, in health, in the space you're living in. It's great for myriad reasons, really.
Very cool. So, is let's just tap a bit further into this word of food freedom. I think I get what that means, but what's your definition of food freedom?
Yes. So as we define it, food freedom is having the ability to produce your own food at some level. It could be as simple as growing cilantro in a pot on your windowsill, or maybe using a hydroponic system to replace almost all of your veggie needs. But essentially getting some of that food freedom, knowing exactly where your food is going to come from, is we believe is an important thing right now, and will increasingly be in the future for consumers.
So, Clifton, can we just maybe rewind a little bit and paint the picture for us as to why would this, number one, be of interest to people? Two, what's driving this movement as something that's going to be more relevant in the future? And how does it impact people in urban settings who don't necessarily have a lot of space? But perhaps maybe paint the picture of the history of how do we get here, and why is it important to kind of, we used to grow our own crops, thousands of years ago.
Sure.
I don't think you have
Then
to
the
go back that
industrial,
far. Probably just even
that
100 years, gardening was much more
yeah, I mean,
common than today.
the agricultural age lasted like several thousand years, and then we moved into the industrial age and so on. So, what's the thinking, and what's causing this renaissance, if you will, to grow your own crops? What's the thought behind it?
Yeah, so there's a convergence of a few different areas. The first one is the technology. We have more technology in more areas and more ways of growing our own food than we ever did before. Hydroponics is a great example of that. Another trend we could call like an overarching trend is that people are really interested in where their food comes from and the quality of their food. It's no longer enough to just walk into a grocery store and buy a head of lettuce. People have became now are or scrutinizing where the origin of these vegetables, and they're realizing that a 10,000-mile supply line just doesn't suit their health. And the third thing is, it's obvious based on many international studies that the future of food is probably human grown at like the human level. We've reached the end of what we can do with industrialization. There's some automation that can fill in the gaps, but most people in the world, certainly in the developing world, they're still growing their own food. So there's a lot of efficiencies that we can build into a system going forward by understanding more about how to do it in our urban space in the developed world.
Clifton, this inevitably brings me back to something that I've seen in the tech world, which is barcode traceability. So where do you see this technology fit into what Plant3r is doing, if applicable? Of course, I'm just taking a wild guess here, but I see this. I just take an apple, you see the barcode in there. So do you see like some convergence with barcode traceability technology?
Certainly, yeah. Being able to trace food across the supply chain is really important. Farmers markets are a great example of that. There's a large number of people that just want to know where their produce is coming from, so they're paying enormous premiums on the prices for it. The advent of blockchain technology could potentially be a really good source for being able to trace these things. But I think that the main driver is just going to be getting closer to the source of the food. That's going to be a big driver for a lot of these things. Eventually, we'll have scanning technology those will be deployed in order to allow you to scan your food, even with just regular cameras, and get a sense of what's the nutrient density of it. Is it coated with any kinds of chemicals that you may not want to ingest into your body? But that's a hard science and material science problem that I'm betting we'll probably solve it by the end of the decade. To answer your question regarding Plant3r, we're kind of early stage in that we're getting people to think about these things and how to do more for themselves. So probably somewhere towards the end of the decade, we'll be in a place where we can actually provide more guidance for people in identifying. So, for example, like identifying good things in their good things or bad things in their food.
Right.
Thank
So
you.
let's say the majority of us are sold. Okay. My influence comes from watching TV shows like The Walking Dead and realizing that if we enter an apocalypse, I'm screwed. Like most
Yeah.
plants come to
We
my
all
home to
are.
die. Okay. I really do not have a green thumb. My thumb is relatively black, unfortunately. So what does Plant3r do? How can you help me? I live in a city. I do not have much land at my disposal. How does your tech work? What do you do to help your users?
Sure. So Our overarching goal is to take people from zero and give them the confidence to grow more each year progressively over the course of their life, essentially. So what we do first is our virtual assistant that allows you to design a garden up, pick the size of your space, get your category, choose the plants you want to grow, and then crucially we provide the weekly maintenance that you'll need for that activity over the course of the growing season. So our method is to just give you the instructions you need when you need it. You don't need to read a bunch of books or spend hours on a Facebook group. We're just going to show it to you right then. So when you go out to your garden, say like a Saturday morning or a Sunday, then we'll have a list of your activities that you'll need to do. You check all of those off, and then you go, go watch Netflix, whatever, whatever other thing you might need. So it's about providing the right information at the right time, which is really the promise of information technology. We also have a hydroponic system that is it's pretty neat. It's a vertical hanging one, so you can hang it indoors with LED lights on both sides of it, grow year round. You can hang it outside off of a balcony. It's extremely flexible, and I have not seen a system that is so easy to use and yet can grow such large amounts of produce for a family or for an individual up until now.
I
So,
love it. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. I know I've heard of a hydroponic system where in a trailer you can grow crops right in a big urban city center and deliver it to a grocer that's literally miles away instead of hundreds of miles away. And it's a pretty interesting technology that I think came out of the cannabis market, right? So that was kind of like the
Yes.
discovery, but they discovered you can grow other things other than cannabis using hydroponic technology. So what's the thought around this idea that, let's say someone has a little more space and gets a little more of a green thumb than others and has an excess amount of food. Will the platform enable to do community sharing or community trading? What's the thinking longer term in terms of enabling us to barter or buy and sell from each other in the neighborhood?
Yeah, that's certainly a part of the greater vision. Once we get over the massive hurdle of getting people from zero to planting, then we'll have the ability to say, okay, well, you've achieved 100% of your food freedom, and you've got 20% left over. Now we can use those resources and begin to share with other people, or or trade or barter, as you mentioned before. It's certainly within the roadmap, but we have a long development process to get people from the zero to their level of information that they need to grow. So it's going to be a while. I don't know exactly. It's hard for me to predict because we're still building the machine that would be able to help people do that. Once we have it together, then we'll actually have a really good sense of it.
Clifton, can you I was looking at your website. Can you elaborate a little bit on what Smart Hand Tool is, please?
Yeah, sure. So that's a little bit more under our R&D, but it was originally designed to be an assistive technology for the gardening space.
Mm-hmm.
It's essentially it looks like a gun, and then I know what you're thinking. Oh, great! You revolutionized the world by creating a new gun. But this particular gun is capable of planting life in the soil, and it does it in a way that allows you to stand upright, drill down. You pull the trigger and you plant seeds, and also because it has an auger based planting system, that will also permit you to do weeding vertically as well. So it's still under MVP. We're taking as much feedback as we can. But the primary thing it does is it allows people that have some mobility issues or who just simply have trouble touching the ground. It gets them out planting and weeding, which is a huge that's a huge positive for a lot of people as they grow older and they still want to do these kinds of activities.
Yeah, of course.
Definitely. I
Thank
love
you,
the
Clifton.
Sounds fun.
and the inclusivity. Yeah.
Sounds
It
fun
does,
too.
actually.
You can get trigger happy and plant a bunch of plant the whole garden.
Kids, I think even kids would really respond well to that as well. Like, the older people might
Exactly.
need it, but the kids want it, I suppose. So let's go back to this like ground zero thing. How what is required of someone? Like, how easy is it for me to acquire what I need to get my mini garden started? And I guess, yeah, let's kind of start there. Like, material wise, cost wise, how accessible is gardening really?
hmm So the good news is nature really doesn't waste anything. Waste is a human enterprise. We've become really good at it. But in nature, we have something called composting, which allows you to take the resources that are out there, break them down, and then put them into a new form, which can be consumed by plants and grown again. So, the most efficient way of growing your own garden is to do some form of composting and to use seeds that you get in the grocery store or any of the produce that you're already buying and just grow those again. So, your tomatoes, your cucumbers do really well with that. You can root from other vegetables. So, for example, like cilantros in a water base like a hydroponic system, you could root those again and then grow. They would grow again. So those techniques are really efficient and actually really cheap. But the main cost almost for the entire enterprise of growing your own food is the fertilizer and the compost. If you can crack how to reuse your resources and generate your own compost, which is easy to do, by the way, but if you can do that consistently, then you can grow a lot on your own at very, very low cost.
Very cool. No, does your, I'm sorry, I forget, like, the tool that you utilize for me, it has a name and I totally spaced it. What is you were
Uh, the
calling it your, what is it called?
the plant
The
the planting
Go ahead.
tool or the software? Which
Well,
which one?
the tool that I would use, the software behind it. Like, what types of factors do you take into consideration? So obviously, what my space and what I want to grow, but are we also getting into the complexity of the environment around me, like the time of the year? For example, I live in the Sonoran Desert, very hot, dry. And in addition to growing my own food, I would want to be water conscious, right? Of like what's
hmm
best, what's sustainable where I am, not just can I grow it. Have we reached that level?
Um,
That's the beauty of hydroponic.
yes, hydroponics is a great place. Like that's a great solution for where you are. Very water efficient, and also you keep it out of the elements, so you're able to control for evaporation, diseases, pests, those sorts of things. So generally speaking, yes, we do have a sense of what you can grow at what times, but we have not deployed the entire information technology infrastructure to really get granular down to the point where we know that you're in the Sonoran Desert, and even with so maybe you're behind a mountain or you're in a valley. Eventually, we'll be able to control those variables down and get you very, very specific results and suggestions. At the moment, it's more based on the same time cycles we would have done it generations ago. It's springtime. It's more likely to rain at this time of year across the entire super region that you're in, and that's it. But our goal is to really help people be successful. So as we have more and more information technology, we'll be able to help with more and more granular details and instructions.
So,
I can I
go
could
ahead,
see
Carlos.
I could see how Matt Damon in The Martian could have benefit from this technology from Planter. Definitely, it would
Yes,
Well,
it would have
I
yes.
saved
think
him a
that's what he was
lot of
using.
yeah, a lot of headaches. So yeah, sorry, Tulio. I'm
So,
sorry. Go ahead,
just
please.
curious to find out where you're seeing more traction here in the States or abroad. Like, for example, even Europe has a bigger history for growing their own crops for a long time. I'm a son of a farmer growing up in Europe. It's just common to do that, right? Um, but so it is here too in smaller towns and more rural areas. But I'm curious as it relates to, for example, a lot of people not don't just want to know where it came from, but also they want to know the type of seed. Some people are very not in favor of GMO, for example, which is outlawed in most countries except here in the States. So is the platform going to facilitate in terms of where to source for things like seeds as well? Because that's become more and more difficult in recent years as big agriculture has sort of become like big pharma in a
Yeah,
way. What are your thoughts on that?
sure. So the nice thing about it is if you move away from the non-organic, so moving away from genetically modified organisms, those are a product of the industrial farming age. If you're growing on a human scale, you don't need the things that they're providing. It's not useful for us. So as we get more and more people into the growing process, then we can take advantage of, say, cloning. And when I say cloning, I mean growing your own seeds, essentially, because that's what it is. And so we'll be able to raise a new generation of people to grow seeds, grow plants, and then grow more seeds, up to and including perhaps generating lots of new varieties that weren't out there. Anecdotally, I can say that as we've been looking at expanding our hydroponic system, we have been limited to container-sized plants. So these are plants with very small root systems. They're maybe about this big. It can be larger. So in our research, we've discovered that there's actually a lot of great plant growers out there, and so we found sources for seeds of tomatoes, heirloom tomatoes, that all grow in containers about this large.
Wow.
Dozens of them, and it's very easy to. So those are possible to grow in any urban space, and they wouldn't be super prolific, but they would provide a wide variety of tastes that people aren't aware of yet. So there's a lot of good things that can happen.
Very
I could
cool.
see it now. I'd like to get a 5-bedroom house, but there's only 4 of you. Well, we need 1 to be a hydroponic growing room for food.
Sure.
Sounds interesting.
Why not, right?
Why not, right? Exactly.
Very cool. What
So-
about coming to my rescue? So you make it easy for us as a user, like, have you watered your cilantro today? But what about, my plant doesn't look happy. The soil is this color. I see this other thing growing. It's turning brown. Are you able to help with this kind of Q&A rescue mission?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So initially, it's just going to be the people at Plant3r who have experience in growing. We're going to be troubleshooting. So we'll be there essentially to help you live when you have trouble. Going forward, there's a large amount of visual data from the industrial machine, agricultural machines, that they're able to scan for nutrient deficiencies, water problems, whether or not the plant is under attack by one type of malady or another. So we'll be able to start using that visual data and provide the information, in the moment. But given our present scale, it's probably going to be a human helping, and that's pretty normal for these kinds of activities at the moment, anyways.
So
Cool.
is there a plan to initially sort of gamify this a little bit? Let me give you a little context around that. I have a friend who started this company called Venome, I think, where they used your saliva and through your DNA can match up to like the perfect wine for you. And this guy's an ex-CEO of like a life sciences company that got acquired by GM. Like, couldn't you use that for like diet purposes, like something bigger than which wine to choose? And it was like, well, that's the initial plan, is to get people excited about something fun about the wine, but then introduce other things like that. So I'm thinking, what's the plan on how you can promote this? Like, I could just imagine someone being able to grow the perfect grape and make their own wine, for example. I mean, that could be fun for some people as a way to get them started. How do you get people started in this who don't have a green thumb, or like, I have no clue how to get started? Is there a plan to get them started with something maybe that excites them? What's your thinking there?
Yeah. The short answer to that is essentially an Instagrammable gardening, shareable gardening. So being able to capture what's going on in your space, your growing space, digitize that and share it with other people. That's the short answer. In the future, that could possibly include AR and a lot of gamification elements, but lots of stuff to build before we get there. So initially, it's just, hey, look what I'm building. Here's a picture. Here's something digital you can share with other people, and that would be really beneficial.
Sounds like it could be a good feature for the metaverse for Mark Zuckerberg.
Yes.
Clifton, we're approaching the final segment of today's conversation, and I would not want to end it without asking you specifically about Plant3r and what drives you at the cultural level. So, what is the company like? Say that you were to reel in great talent to come work with you, what would you say to these people that would definitely make them want to come work with you?
Mm-hmm.
What is the company like?
Sure. So we're absolutely a company of plant nerds. Other people have told us that, and we wear that as a badge of honor. But I would say that we're inherently curious in providing the resources needed for people to grow more of whatever it might be. Most of the world, growing plants is still a human endeavor. It's not a machine. It's not going to be drone driven. It's still going to be a person that takes the care to put something into the soil, however that might be. And so we're looking to enable that going forward.
Great. Thank you so much,
Nice.
Clifton. Okay. Back to you guys.
I'm just curious, we're up on time. We wanted to wrap up. What prompted you to go down this path for this particular initiative? Was there a vision you had for the future? You shared a little bit of that, but I'm just curious of what your thinking is. What would the world look like fast forward in 20 years, according to Plant3r?
Mm-hmm. So I was inspired when I wanted to start gardening. I didn't know how to do it, and I kind of came at it from like a first principles process. Like you probably heard Elon Musk talks a lot about it. If I break all the pieces down, how do I do it? How can I do it in the cheapest possible way? So I got to composting, and then from there I thought, this is actually quite simple. We have information technology to guide us for many things. Also, a large number of we're reinforcing negative habits. Can't we reinforce a positive habit using this? And so planting being one of them, what I chose to focus on. What I see the future, like in an ideal future in a planter, where Plant3r is very successful, in that world would look like some form of guidance always. So no matter where you are on the planet, we would be able to guide you through a successful season based on the size of your space. So we can just tell you tell us the resources, and we'll guide you how to be successful no matter what. So is that some kind of exotic seeds that you've never heard of, or growing in strange ways that maybe no one's discovered yet? It could include those. But I can say that there's a few billion people left on the planet that are going to be planting and harvesting by hand, and I hope that that our work in the developed world will provide the benefits that will follow out to them and empower them as well. Ultimately, that's been the course of human technology.
Brilliant. Yeah, I could see the value of that in underdeveloped countries, for example, where the cost of everything is just impossible. So this sounds like something that could actually be of real value there as well. Well, it's great to have had you as a guest. We're up on time. We hope that people take this to heart. You know, as a son of a farmer, I've always had a bit of a green thumb, and you kind of take it for granted sometimes. You just go to the store and you get your stuff, or you order from Instacart or Fresh or whatever. You don't even have to worry about it. But you know, there's nothing like doing something and growing it yourself and seeing it grow and eating it, and like, I grew these cucumbers or these zucchini or these tomatoes or whatever it is. It's pretty cool, and there's a lot of value in that. So we wish you a lot of success with it. We will definitely stay in touch to see how it progresses along. Lots of potential there. And again, thank you for being with us today. Carlos, what do we got coming up next week? I think this is the last show for this week. Tomorrow we have a whole hands, and we're going to do a restream. But what do we got coming up next week?
Sure, Tulio. We got a full week ahead on Tuesday. So on Tuesday, we're going to be having, just 1 second, please. Okay, we're going to be having Zebrium on Tuesday. And then Wednesday, we're going to be having Paystand. And finally, on Thursday, we're going to be having Spindly. All of these great tech companies that we are looking forward to having conversations with right here on Dojo Live at 12 p.m. Pacific as ever. So join us, everybody. And remember, have fun and be safe. And please, and of course, thanks Clifton. Yeah, exactly. Plant something. There you have it. So Clifton,
Please,
thanks
yes.
for having been with us today. So stay with us as we go off the air. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.